Hello dear students, welcome back to EduHunt video lecture series. We have finished biotic components of the ecosystem. What are biotic components? The living organisms. They constitute the biotic components of the ecosystem. And what is the role of those biotic components in the ecosystem? That is, they circulate the minerals from one phase to another, and for their circulation they need not only the organisms, they also require the abiotic components for their circulation and for their cyclic process. They obtain food from one source and they serve as food or source of energy for the next trophic level. All these things we have discussed, and also we have answered so many questions based on this concept. Now we are entering a second component of the ecosystem, that is abiotic components. Abiotic components, they constitute the non-living things that are present around us. That is, while dealing with the introduction, we mentioned that there are different domains in the ecology or ecosystem. What are those domains? The lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere and biosphere. And there is an interrelation. There is a network of connections among all these different domains. Among these, the abiotic components, they are present in the soil, in air, that is in the atmosphere, even they are present in water. Hydrosphere also they are present. What are those abiotic components? Those abiotic components are nothing but light, various gases in the atmosphere, and even the water vapor and soil, all these things, soil along with minerals and water. All these things together, they constitute the abiotic component of the ecosystem. We have mentioned various biotic components, different types like producers as well as consumers. Producers, for their energy and nutrition, they depend on, not for nutrition exactly, we say that for energy purpose, for their source, energy source, they depend on sun, solar radiation. They are not depending on any other organisms for food. But the organisms of the successive trophic levels, they depend on producers. Consumers depend on producers. Like that, the energy moves on in the system. But the amount of energy that is present in the universe is constant. We can never create, we can neither create or destroy the energy. These things were clearly explained in thermodynamic laws. And while dealing with the non-living components, that is abiotic component, we should mention various minerals which are essential for biotic components. Biotic components require minerals. Our body requires minerals, isn't it? Definitely our body requires various minerals. We obtain minerals through food, and sometimes the minerals or the vitamins or any other nutrient supplement which is not supplied through food, then we are getting them in the form of medicines like tablets, iron tablets, zinc tablets, like that we are additionally giving those minerals to the body, because these are very essential for proper functioning of body. Is it clear? Now we deal with various abiotic components. The abiotic components include the minerals, soil, water and various gases, and also solar energy, that is light. Temperature, pressure, humidity, all these things constitute the abiotic components. And before going into the details, we just simply say that yes, nutrient cycling. Just now we have mentioned that nutrients are essential or minerals are essential for proper functioning of body. How the minerals are entering the body and how they are leaving the body, and how they are going into different components, different trophic levels or different components of the different domains in the ecosystem. That gives the cycling, how the nutrient cycling takes place in the nature. It is explained in this heading. The minerals which are present in the nature, they enter the biotic components from abiotic components. Also they leave the biotic components into the abiotic components and vice versa, like that. Hence these are also called biogeochemical cycles. The nutrient cycles, what is the other name for nutrient cycles? Biogeochemical cycles, because these chemicals, these nutrients are nothing but chemical elements only. That is why we are calling them as chemical elements, or which they are supplying, we are supplying to the body in the form of nutrients. That is why these chemicals are also known as nutrients. Nutrient cycle or biogeochemical cycle, that means these chemical forms or chemical elements, these elements are circulated between abiotic and biotic components through the soil. Biological organism, geo, earth. This is biological organism. Geo means earth. Chemical is nutrient. Yes, these nutrient elements are circulated between organisms and also between biotic and abiotic components through the biological components from earth into the atmosphere and from atmosphere to the earth. Like that they circulate from one component to the other. That is why the nutrient cycling process is also known as biogeochemical cycle. And in this heading we explain nutrient cycle. Only one nutrient cycle is explained in this session. Two types of nutrient cycles are there. One is the sedimentary cycle and the second one is the gaseous cycle. Sedimentary cycles include phosphorus, sulfur. Gaseous cycles include nitrogen, oxygen and carbon. That means the element which is in the form of gas, that is like oxygen, even carbon dioxide. Carbon is also in the form of gas, that is CO2. Oxygen in the form of O2. Nitrogen in the form of N2. These nutrients or these gases or these chemicals are cycled through various components of the ecosystem. It is explained in gaseous cycle. In the same way, the solid components or the solid nutrients or solid chemicals are phosphorus and sulfur, which are explained in sedimentary cycle. The main reservoir for gaseous cycle is the atmosphere and also the ocean, because atmosphere consists of various gases like oxygen, nitrogen carbon dioxide and even water vapor. All these gases are present in the atmosphere. Not only the atmosphere, even oceans also consist of these gases, because water consists of oxygen and even CO2 in dissolved form. వాటర్లో కూడా CO2 ఉంటుంది, ఆక్సిజన్ కూడా ఉంటుంది. అందుకే అక్వాటిక్ యానిమల్స్ వాటర్లో సర్వైవ్ అవుతున్నాయి. వాటర్లో సర్వైవ్ అవ్వాలంటే దే నీడ్ oxygen for respiration and CO2 for photosynthesis. Isn't it? Plants require CO2 for photosynthesis. Not only plants, the algal forms also require CO2 for photosynthesis and oxygen for their breathing purpose. So how they are getting these gases? They are not present in the air, they are not present on the land. How they are getting these life gases? Because they are present even in water in dissolved form. That is why these organisms, the aquatic animals and aquatic plants, are successfully surviving in the water. Sedimentary cycle, as I mentioned, sedimentary cycle explains the nutrients which are in the form of solids. These are present in rocks, soils. So the reservoir for sedimentary cycle is soil and a large big rocks. Let's see what is a carbon cycle. Before going into the details of carbon cycle, let's see one more, only the image of nitrogen cycle. Yes, not the nitrogen cycle, this is the carbon cycle. The picture is shown is carbon cycle only. Anyway, nitrogen cycle is also there. In the same way, how the carbon cycle undergoes, how the carbon cycle takes place, how it occurs in the nature, and the same way nitrogen cycle also goes on. Here if we see sunlight which is falling on the plant, then the energy is converted into a different form, that is chemical form. The sun giving its energy in the form of radiation, solar radiation. Now the plant takes up that radiation, the energy from the sun, that is energy in the form of quanta, that is h nu, energy in the form of h nu. That energy, the solar radiation that is taken up by the plant, will convert into another chemical form, that is C6H12O6. Starch, glucose, starch, proteins, fats, all these are chemical components, chemical substances. Whenever these convert the energy into chemical form, they store that energy, energy in the cells. From there they reach the ground after they dead. Not only this, they obtain carbon. We are talking about the carbon cycle, that is why we should concentrate on, not on the sunlight, we should concentrate on the carbon. Plants acquire or they take up the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. How much percentage of carbon dioxide is present in the atmosphere? That is 0.03% only. 0.03% carbon dioxide is present in the air. That will be taken up by the plant and they fix the carbon in the form of glucose. This process is known as photosynthesis. Now the carbon is present in the plant in the form of glucose, in the form of proteins, in the form of fats, in the form of other organic acids, and all these things that are present have carbon. After their death, not only after death, the plants shed, the trees shed leaves seasonally and occasionally. After they reach the ground, they will be attacked by the microorganisms, the detritivores. microbiota, microorganisms, bacteria, saprophytic fungi, all these organisms, they act on these dead leaves, dead bodies, dead leaves. They break down the complex molecules into simpler ones, and then they slowly release those simpler molecules into the soil. Okay? And these plants are eaten by organisms like herbivores. I am talking about biotic components. CO2 is an abiotic component which will go to the biotic component, and after their death the CO2, and not only after death, CO2 will also be released by the organisms like plants and animals during respiration. Okay, respiration lo kuda CO2 release avutundi. Again this CO2 will go to the air, atmosphere, and even this organism that is shown in the picture also respires and releases its CO2 into the atmosphere, and its remains will go into the soil. Ante atmosphere loki, soil loki kuda carbon vellindi. Now again, not only through the soil, even CO2 and carbon monoxide, which are dangerous to living organisms, also released by certain factories, chemical factories, automobiles, like that. Ultimately they will be released into the atmosphere. In the same way, carbon dioxide reaching the plant will again, through various agents, it is again reaching the atmosphere. This is known as carbon cycle. The whole thing is explained here. Whatever I explained now, that is present on the board. Carbon cycle is cyclic representation of the element carbon, and assimilation by green plants. As I said, they synthesize food materials by taking CO2. In presence of sunlight, they take CO2 and water. CO2 is a small molecule, water is a small molecule. Plants combine these two small simpler molecules in presence of sunlight. They utilize the energy present in the sunlight to form a new big molecule, that is C6H12O6, known as glucose. And in the same way, they synthesize proteins and they synthesize fats. All these things, they require energy. Anyway, green plants, in the form of photosynthesis, they assimilate carbon in the form of glucose. After their death, they reach the ground. These are eaten by animals. The plants are eaten by animals, and finally during respiration of plants and animals, CO2 will be released into the surroundings, that is into the atmosphere. Thus carbon is cycled through transfer and transformation between biotic and abiotic components. As I said, biotic and abiotic components, both the things are involved in cyclic process of any nutrient. Cyclic process of any nutrient includes both biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem. Yes, this is the end of my session, my dear students. I hope you understood well about the carbon cycle. It is in simpler way, carbon present in the atmosphere in the form of CO2. There are only few steps in carbon cycle. Carbon is present in the form of CO2 in the atmosphere, in the air. That will be absorbed by the plant or autotroph to synthesize food. And also the food, the plant will be eaten by the animal. Plant also respires, even an animal also respires. Both individuals, any organism respires. After during respiration, what they do, they inhale oxygen and they release CO2. And you should keep in mind one point, that there are two types of respirations. One is aerobic and the second one is anaerobic respiration. Whatever be the individual, it respires, living organism respires. What type of respiration? Depending on the type of respiration, they utilize oxygen, and some organisms, they cannot take up the oxygen and they release CO2 out. That is called anaerobic respiration, and the organisms are said to be anaerobes. Whatever be the type of respiration they release, irrespective of the type of respiration, they release CO2 into the atmosphere. In the same way, plants take up CO2 from the atmosphere. Again, they are releasing, even the animals also releasing CO2 into the atmosphere. Like that, atmospheric CO2 is remaining constant, or atmospheric CO2 levels are maintained in the universe, not only the universe, on the earth, in the atmosphere, in the gaseous form. That is explained in this session. And the major thing, the main remembering point is that any mineral, any nutrient that will be circulated, it includes both biotic and abiotic components. We are saying that there is an interconnection, interrelation between biotic and abiotic components. That relation was now proved. It is proved now. Yes, the relation between these two living organisms and also non-living things, these are maintained. The relation is maintained between these two, because without the CO2, without oxygen, without water, without light, without minerals, plants or animals, they could not survive. They could not be able to survive. And after, if they take continuously, what is the result? The ultimate result could be depletion of minerals in the, what we call, reservoir. But they are not depleting, they are again recharging. How they are getting recharged? That all depends on the living organisms. After their death, they are buried in the ground, they are attacked by the microorganisms. Again, the minerals are going into the soil, and if the gaseous minerals, gaseous elements, gaseous nutrients are present, they are again in the form of respiration, and in other processes they are again going into the atmosphere. In this way, the minerals are cycled, called biogeochemical cycles. Through the earth, through the living organism, the nutrients are circulated, cycled. Now it is explained clearly. I hope you understood well and you follow me clearly. Thank you.